The world is saved. The living room's dark, save for light being cast from the big TV screen and the imminent sunrise that's teasing the one starry sky with whispers of morning.
Hey, George.
Hey, Lions. How's it going?
Oh, it's not Lions. It's Mr. X.
Whoa. It's Dr. Wiley.
It's Dr. Wiley. It was
Actually,
always
I
Dr.
want you to
Wiley.
know-
It was always going to be Dr. Wiley.
It's just like when, like what was it? Gant, I think, in Twilight Princess. It's like, it's going to be Ganondorf. I don't want to screw this up for you, but it's going to be Ganondorf because it's going to be Ganondorf.
Yeah, well, and this is having not played Ocarina of Time when it was new, and I, played the re-release later. Like, I'm sure for a lot of people when they first played that, they were like, "Oh my God, who's this Ganondorf?" Oh, it's Ganon.
Yeah,
right. There's a guy Ganon right in the name.
And to be fair, I do appreciate this. Just right off the top segue. I do appreciate that you did play Ocarina of Time, but I do think that the one key thing that you missed out on.
Was
the boots.
No,
the boots.
No, dude. That's why you play the remake. Like, I mean, let's have a little mini nostalgia goggles inside of this episode of Nostalgia Goggles. I have recommended that game to lots of people, and 100% of the time I say, but make sure you play the remake because you can get in and out of your inventory 100 times faster, which will make the water temple not suicidal. Like,
yes.
My God. Like, I've seen people speedrun through that game, and even people who are the fastest players in the world can't do that crap quickly.
No, you can't. And that's the thing. So that's why I think that should we ever play Ocarina of Time, we have to play the original. No, we would have to, because otherwise, like we would have to comment on that, because it is on the small things that history turns. And I do want you to know, it took active effort during the intro here for me to not hum the boss intro music for Mega Man.
Wait, do you mean when they're coming down from the sky all anti-Poochie, or do you mean like when the level starts? Like the level starts,
the intro of the
it's so good.
That is classic. But we can talk more about that during audio. But we played Mega Man 6, the Mega Man-ing, I think, right?
Yes. No, that was definitely the subtitle. What was your nostalgia experience for this game? Oh wait, I'm sorry, I got to do tangents ruin everything. 94, and it matters that this game came out in 1994 or 1894, one of those years. Because this was the last classic Mega Man on the Nintendo Entertainment System, which matters a lot because I don't think we're going to play the classic Mega Men that were on Super Nintendo because they were hot garbage. And somehow Mega Man X, which we've already played, was just this absolute utter ball of perfection. And when they tried to port Mega Man Classic, like the classic style, onto the Super Nintendo, just utter catastrophe. So it is worth noting that this is the last Mega Man Classic on the Nintendo Entertainment System because somehow that super mattered to the quality of this game.
Yes, it did. But for me, my nostalgia experience, this is absolutely one that I just hemorrhaged time into with my friend Justin. I remember we would just... Oh man, we would play this and we would just switch off, I think we if you beat a boss or if you died, then that was cause for the controller to flip, but aside from that, we would just, and there were levels that he was better at than me. So he would play those, I would forego my turn to let him play them and vice versa. I mean, we knew this game backwards and forwards, and I was disappointed with how much of it I had forgotten when I picked up the controller. I was like, I have got this. Really? Yamato Man? Huh. I remember Yamato Man. So yeah, how about you?
So I had a deep abiding love for Mega Man 2, which I was terrible at. I could not ever do the Quickman straight down falling thing. And Flashman stage with all spikes. I sucked so hard, but for some reason I love that game to death. I had 3 and 4 and I played 3 and 4 like a mamma jamma, and 5, I don't think 5 existed. I think it went 4, 6. And then Brian had 6. No, that's definitely how those numbers work. And then and then Brian had 6, and the reason I remember playing 6 with him is because he played it the way you just described playing it. And this is the only one that has the insane Rush boxing gloves.
Yes.
And every time I see the Rush boxing gloves, it just smashes me back in time to his living room where the like all the consoles were plugged in, because he had like one of those crazy splitter things. And so we would like play Mega Man 6 and I would be like, oh yeah, it's the one with the crazy boxing gloves. And then when, you know, a couple weeks ago when you were like, oh dude, we should play Mega Man 6. I was like, Mega Man 6. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's in here. Let me look that up on the old Google image. It's the one with the crazy boxing gloves. Like, it's such an iconic, for better or worse, like it's such an iconic thing of this game that you get boxing gloves. So yep. I mean, I remember this game fondly, but it is very much through the lens of like, this was the weird Mega Man that I played at Brian's house, and like Mega Man 4 was the normal Mega Man I played at my house.
Well, and that was the thing that I mean, for my thing, one of the reasons why, and I figured that what we'll probably end up doing now at this point is because we played Mega Man X, we are now playing Mega Man 6. I figure like let's just go back in time and watch the de-evolution of Mega Man, you know, because like the next one she plays like, you know, like 3 and then 2 and then 1. And then we'll just make our own Mega Man game on MS Paint.
Yeah, there you go. No, it's got to be like a, you know what it needs to be is a text adventure.
No, what we should do is create a tabletop RPG that's just Mega Man. Like I'll DM it, and you can just be Mega Man. Be like, all right, roll the hit, miss.
I jump over the pit, you fall in the pit.
But I didn't even roll. I know, man, dude, it's glitchy. I don't know what to tell you.
Sorry.
But no, the reason why I remember specifically the Rush boxing gloves and the Rush jetpack was because like literally my friend and I, we would create out of cardboard boxes the boxing glove, and we would be like, yeah, and then we'd try to, you know, make it so that way like Rush was like coming and like but we weren't that good at it, you know. No. So it eventually just became, you know, the boxing glove set, which eventually just became us beating the holy hell out of each other, you know, like you do.
Little boys are stupid.
Yeah, we are.
Are.
Anyways, but yeah. So visuals.
So the thing about the classic Mega Man games is when I say Mega Man 2, Mega Man 3, Mega Man 4, Mega Man 5, Mega Man 6, that spans 7 years, I think, of NES game development. And for most of the game, Mega Man 6 looks exactly like Mega Man. Yep. There is very, very little that is jump out at you obvious on a given stage or in a given Robot Master fight. Like, everything kind of looks and feels like every other Mega Man in terms of like graphics quality. And I don't just mean like, oh, well, it's a Nintendo, of course it is, like, but they did learn how to make better artwork just because pixel art was still kind of a new thing at that time, and they got used to like how they could eke extra performance out of the hardware, which happens every hardware generation. And yet they don't seem to have done that for most parts of the core game, which is like playing through the levels. Now, in between levels, when you like get a new power, like those graphics are amazing. Like everything is like super detailed and looks great. And then you see, you know, like Mega Man, you beat a Robot Master in Mega Man, like he's like looking right at the camera and he like changes color and it's like, you got a new weapon. And he's like a super high res, like full screen sprite. And then he goes away and then like little actual sprite from the level Mega Man comes back and he's like his 2 colors. And he's like 32 pixels tall, and you're just like, what? Where'd the other guy go? Like, I'm gonna be that guy. He looked cool.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I think I know why. So first of all, I think that this would be, if not the birth of, certainly on the earlier end of, in service to the brand, right?
Oh, totally.
Is that like Mega Man has a look, you know, so it has to look like a Mega Man game, you know, so they were like, this is the way the game has to look. It's like, oh, well, we actually know how to make it look even nicer. No, this is what Mega Man looks like. He has to look like this. He is this many pixels tall. This is what Mega Man looks like.
Yeah. No, I don't doubt for a second that the sprite in Mega Man 6 is pixel for pixel the sprite in Mega Man like 1.
So I think that that's the reasoning behind it. I don't know. for better or for worse. Because like I don't know whether or not like it was done that way because some, soulless person said like, no, hey, we can't afford to lose a penny on any innovation or anything weird, new, or different. You will ship the same thing. It will be, cookie cutter, and that's it. Or if they basically said like, it ain't broke. Like this was groundbreaking for its time, and it still looks good enough. So why would we change it?
I would say it ain't broke, because they definitely, if you put the Robot Masters from Mega Man 1 and Mega Man 6 side by side, they are way higher detail. The stages in general are way higher detail. So they definitely put more artistic effort in terms of like their skill got better and they understood the hardware better. But it is really, it's almost jarring to see like super flat 2-color Mega Man going up against Robot Masters who have like a little bit of shading and like a little bit of outline and a little bit of like depth to them. And it's fine, but it's you're just like, oh, did you literally just walk here from the first game? Like, have you just been killing robot dudes this whole time? You must be exhausted.
Well, and actually, I'm starting to think of like a new narrative, which is because I mean, like each game has its own like throwaway, whatever. You ain't playing this for the narrative,
Yeah. No. Oh God, was it 2? I think it was 2, where for some reason Dr. Wily disguises himself as an alien. So him BSing you on not being the main baddie has like a long pedigree.
Yeah, so I mean that's fine, whatever. But like to me, I like the idea of like all of the different Mega Man classics, kind of being the story of Mega Man slowly losing meaning in a world that's moving past him. like he doesn't change. Like he's just kind of like no, I can still do that. He's like Old Man Logan. I
could actually, I think I'd offer let's say that is the attempt, like the world is trying to move on and Mega Man will not allow it, because the
so
story
like
of
Inside Out.
Yes, because the story of Mega Man 6 is we're going to have a robot tournament with all of these racist robots. And then Mr. X comes in and is like, blah, ha, ha, I'm going to use them to take over the world. And then Mega Man, who is ostensibly the same Mega Man from like way back when, just is like, nah, and goes and kills all these brand new, super powerful, kind of ethnically insensitive robots. And like, so the world is like, no, we can build newer, better robots. And Mega Man is just marching around reminding everyone how wrong they are.
But yeah, so I like the idea that, Mega Man is an archaic thing from a bygone age in a world that has clearly moved past him, and that's represented cleanly in the visuals. As far as to speak of visuals for the sake of visuals, I really did enjoy these. I thought that the all of the sprites were varied in general, thematically appropriate, but if anything, I felt that some of the visuals for the sake of visuals were great, but they kind of started to bleed into poor visuals in the service of the gameplay, because there were actually so many different sprites, that like it would sometimes kind of slow me down a little bit, because I'd be like, oh, what does this guy do? Oh, what does this guy do? And then like you never see that one again,
Yeah, there are a few enemies you see like once or twice in that level, and then maybe never again, or maybe not until like, level 8 of Wily's Castle or whatever, like super close to the end. And I kind of like that in a way, because it makes the game feel less formulaic, right? If there were 5 enemies and you could memorize all their patterns, you would be like, oh, well, when I see blue circle man, I do this. When I see red triangle face, I do that. And so the fact that you see an enemy at the beginning of the level, like that unnerves you a little bit, because now like you're waiting, like, oh, when I move to this next screen and when I climb this ladder, like they might be there, but they're not. They're never there. And so you're just constantly like, you're coming into the room expecting or maybe even hoping for like this pattern that's right in the front of your mind. And then you see other enemies and you have to like jump to that, the way they move and the way they behave.
Yeah. And that's the thing is I don't think that it was to the point where I was like, the game's broken, everything's terrible. But there were definitely some times where I didn't really feel that they really got a good bang for their buck on the enemies. And I kind of feel like it goes both ways, because there were some enemies that they use where I'm like, this enemy is not very interesting with the way that it, interacts. Like it fires a single ball at an arc, kind of generally towards me, okay, that's fine. But then that one you'd see, like, what was it? Those panda sprite, whatever, panda monsters.
Yeah. There's a red panda and a black and white panda, and I think they have slightly different attacks.
Yeah, but the black and white panda, like that one you see a lot, right? And
Yes.
and I kind of like felt that one was kind of like lackluster. But there were some enemies where you see them once, and I was like, that enemy was interesting. I would have liked to have seen them in like different settings, because I feel that I would have liked to have solved more puzzles with that being part of it,
Yeah, and that might be what's happening is like, let's pretend they have like a difficulty formula per screen that's like amount of platforming hardness times amount of enemy hardness, and that gives you like the difficulty for that screen, right? And so as they're designing the level, they're like, oh, we have to have like so much difficulty distributed and so many opportunities, like get your health back, and like this is where the checkpoint is, right? That kind of thing. And this actually sounds believable. Like they might actually do it like this. But they, if they are prioritizing platforming difficulty, that means that the ones that would ramp up the combat difficulty aren't going to show up nearly as often, because then you have to be on a boring screen where all you're doing is shooting at that enemy. So you're going to buy this formula I've made up and decided is canon, see those types of enemies less, and see the boring ones that move in a really predictable pattern more, as there's less and less ground for you to stand on. So you have a simple pattern you have to deal with, but like in a trickier platforming situation.
And I could definitely see that. And I think that one of the things that would make them able to, have the error bars be larger on that formula, so that way you could have more enemy, like the same enemy showing up in like more different and interesting patterns and tiles. It would be to cut down the cycle time, but we'll get into that in mechanics. But yeah, so I like I said, and that's the thing, is that this isn't really like I feel like they did this wrong. It was just kind of like something I would have liked to have seen, because there were definitely some bad guys where I wanted to see, like, especially some of the bigger boss, kind of mini boss ones, where I was like, this would have been interesting if it was like in a situation where I was fighting it, like it and something else was going on, at the same time. Like there's a couple of times where like there's a Implant Man stage where there's like this huge tank looking guy that had like punches at you, him.
Yeah, he's almost like he almost looks kind of like a big like monkey or a big gorilla, but he like has tank feet. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, he punches you.
Anyways, like you fight him twice, but both times you fight him, it's just like against the black background. It's just him. Like the encounter is exactly the same. So I'm just kind of like, why did I fight this guy twice?
So let me speculate as a way of tying this to one of my graphics notes, which is there were a few screens where the developers forgot that the Nintendo has limited processing speed and can only do so much graphically at the same time, especially when that crap needs to be moving. And now that you just said against a black background, I'm pretty confident that that's not a coincidence. He is moving against a black background because to have a background behind him would be like an unreasonable amount of processing power. Because there are a couple screens where just through laziness, if you don't take out enemies, you might end up with like 4 or 5 things moving at the same time. And if they're moving and you're moving, and then there's like projectiles moving, because some of those enemies can also fire projectiles, like the frame rate drops to negative numbers. Like you start traveling backwards through time. It's really jarring and unpleasant, because the game is otherwise very not just smooth, but has a really consistent pace. Like Mega Man moves at a really consistent pace, the bosses move at a really consistent pace, the enemies tend to move at a really consistent pace. So like punchy monkey guy, I'm gonna say he's a gorilla, Donkey Kong, he would
Mecha Donkey Kong.
Yeah. I would play the crap out of that game. So Mecha Donkey Kong.
Nintendo, DM us.
Yeah, seriously. Go out in front of your house. Mecha Donkey Kong would probably not be able to be so large and mini bossy if there was like other crap going on that screen, right? You could maybe make there be an interesting platforming element, but even that might be pushing it because now you have other tiles you have to render on the screen. So yeah, I think that may actually be them recognizing like, okay, this monkey boss is cool. Like, we want you to fight him. We're going to make you fight him again because, like, he's interesting and we're proud of the work we did, but we can't really mix it up because your Nintendo will melt.
Which is entirely legit. I think that, and as you're saying, I'm confident that you're correct that it was a processing limitation, but it is definitely something that I think that we as gamers have come to expect from, like, our games nowadays, which I think, like, going back, like, if all of a sudden, again, if you're viewing it through nostalgia goggles, right? And you're thinking like, oh man, like I just got done playing Mega Man 11. I want to go back and play Mega Man 6, like, because that one was also awesome. It's like, it is. It definitely has, like, there's like good clean visuals. It can't do some of the stuff that you definitely remember it being able to do.
Yeah. No, I think playing games of a specific generation with some regularity is necessary, right? Because, like, you don't have to have played Mega Man 6 just recently, but if you at least played, like, Tetris or Mario, Battletoads, one of those things, like, never Battletoads, but never just something else on the NES to remind you, like, oh yes, this is what the NES is capable of. Like, it sort of keeps you grounded a little bit, because otherwise you do creep into, this is how I remember it. Oh, it's not like I remember it all.
It's kind of like if you're if you're gonna have kids, like, you should probably, like, spend time around different age groups of kids to know what they're capable of. Because if all of a sudden you come walking in the morning and you're like, oh man, I am hung to the over. Hey, you 3-year-old, make me an omelet. Do you know omelet? What do you know? Like,
if you don't know omelet, today is the best day to learn.
All right, just go figure it out. Just go light the stove on fire. So like, that's, it's good to refresh yourself on what these different generations of consoles and children are capable of.
So I do have one interesting thing about visuals that I want to make sure I got your opinion on. And I don't remember if we talked about this during Mega Man X, but is this maybe the first game we've played where lazy palette swapping on the hero is not only super not lazy, but is, like, crucial to success in the game? Like, you need to know what weapon Mega Man has equipped, because wasting ammo on the weapon, like, the boss is weak against, can be a fatal mistake. And it is impossible to look at Mega Man and not know at least that you have a weapon equipped. Even if you haven't memorized all the colors, you definitely know, I am not normal Mega Man right now. Like, because for the Rush Jets and the boxing glove, whatever that one is called, you actually do look different. You're not just color swapped. You, like, your shoulder pads look a little different. Like, you have a different sprite. Everything else is just colors, 100% just swapping colors, right? So Mega Man sprite, but color swap. But that way you can never ever say, like, I don't know if I have a weapon equipped or not, right? Like, it's a platforming game with fast action. You can't always be looking up to the top of the screen, but if you look at Mega Man, you always know, okay, he's got something. Have we played another game where palette swap, literally, like, 2-color palette swapping has been used on the hero in such an, like, overt way?
So I thank you for monologuing as long as you did, because it gave me time to reflect on this, because I wasn't listening to that. That all sounded boring as hell. But no,
piece of shit.
No, I'm really racking my brain. So I think that certainly not to this degree. The only other examples I can think of actually come from other Nintendo games, which would be Mario, right? Does palette swapping, at least for, like, the Fire Flower, right?
Ooh, yeah, good call.
And
to be Luigi.
Link. And Luigi, and but I mean, to be fair, so much as we think it's important to know whether or not you're playing Mario or Luigi, because you don't want to be touching that filthy brother of a plumber.
Poor Luigi.
I mean, to be fair, he by far has the worst game, Luigi's Mansion. I mean, like, it's just utter garbage. I don't know. I've never played it. I never took the time to, because it's utter garbage. But anyways, that's not the point. But the point is Link in Link to the Past with his armor, right?
Oh, yeah. It's the exact same layout and design, just color swapped.
Just color swap to let you know, like, hey, you can now take more damage, right? And also, in like Ocarina, it lets you know, like, oh, you can breathe underwater because you've got that one. So it seems like, but now I'm really trying to think. I can't think of any. I'm sure that there are, So when you come up with them, go scream outside your house at us. But it seems like this is something that Nintendo leverages semi-regularly that I don't think other developers do as often.
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't. This is what makes Nintendo magical, right? Is like we have spent literally hundreds of hours at this point, like railing against palette swapping, and we just came up with a bunch of like examples that were not only so subtle but so integral to the gameplay that we are like celebrating them. It's like, oh man, I always knew that I had that stupid ass plant shield equipped because I was like pink and salmon, right?
Yoshi's in Super Mario World too. Also, the color of the Yoshi.
And it super matters, right? Like the red Yoshi is super different from the yellow Yoshi, but they look identical except like, oh my God, Nintendo, is there anything you're not good at?
But I mean, that's the thing though, is that like, I think that Nintendo kind of recognizes well that all of these are tools in the tool belt, right? So it's just kind of like, are you using this like for better or for worse? Like for example, like giving somebody a performance improvement plan, right? Like a job, right? That's good if you are actually using it to be like, your performance is subpar. This is where you need to be in order to be at or near expectations. And this is how we're going to get you there, right? That is a good use of it. If you're just using it to lay the groundwork to fire somebody, like that makes you evil, know? So like the same thing where it's just kind of like palette swapping. It's like, well, palette swapping, if it is being used to convey important information, is good. If it is being used as a lazy way to not generate more resources for your game, then it's bad, So, but yeah, I definitely think that Mega Man in particular, like it's one of almost like the core mechanics, right? It's like a core visual, which is interesting because that does mean by extension that if you are colorblind, it does make the game a degree more difficult. Not impossible, because you definitely have the bar to the right of your health that also shows you, hey, you're firing a special weapon and what have you, but definitely a degree more difficult for sure.
Yeah, and I would suspect, depending on the kind of colorblind you are, that there are some NES games that are just entirely unplayable because things that look like contrast to us might look uniform to someone else, right? So because there's like 3 or 4 different kinds of colorblindness. So it's because you'd have to keep like kind of peeking up into the corner to be like, oh, what do I have equipped up there? Okay.
One of the best stories of colorblindness that I have was actually one of yours, which was
one of many.
Which, well, I mean, because like I am not colorblind. I'm not deaf. I don't have anosmia. So anytime somebody can tell me a story that helps relay that to me in a meaningful way, I'm like, good. This is like a good data point for me to like kind of relate to that. It was one of yours where your roommate was colorblind, and so he was like, hey, which one of these has the sugar in it? And you're like, the red one. He said, F you. and because you forget. But I mean, it's just like that kind of thing where it's just like, that's not helpful information for me, man. So like that, but kind of in video games to a degree where it's just kind of like, hey, man, all you need to know is just what color are you? It's like, that's not as helpful as you seem to think that it is. Yeah. But yeah, no, that's an interesting point. The one thing that I want to make sure, well, 2 things that I want to make sure we touch on visuals is one, just I don't think we need to spend much time on it, but this is normally when we talk about it. The hitbox is clean. It's just.
Oh yeah, no, I remember celebrating hard when we talked about Mega Man X is exactly what will hit you, exactly what will hit your opponent. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and the thing with and because we normally cover some visuals with the timing of stuff, it is actually because like the box, like what you need to hit is clean, but it will register a hit if you're like a tenth of a second behind on when it should be vulnerable. So for instance, like Nightman, right? Like when his shield's in front of him, he's invincible, right? Like that shield animation will be to where he should be invulnerable. But if that blast hits him like a hair after he's put that shield up, it will still register a hit.
Yeah,
which,
generosity in favor of the player, as it should be.
Yes, again, just enough to where like there were a couple times where like he would be flashing damage, then I was like, yeah, all right, cool, but again, like if I fired that blast off, I was like, no, he was totally vulnerable, man, and it didn't go, and it should have, and now I'm dead. Like those are rage quit moments,
Yeah.
So anyways, but I just wanted to touch on the fact that clean hitbox, just no notes. Good, well done, Nintendo. No notes for you. The one other thing that for visuals and service of gameplay that I think is important to touch on is just how well the telegraphing is handled in this game.
So I agree with you, except for a very specific place. But I will let you say more before I whine and.
Okay. Well, I mean, just like as a general rule, like the telegraphing is handled in such a way where like the enemies clearly wind up. They. Clearly like pull back or what have you. And if they don't, normally the first shot that they fire is far enough away from you that it won't hit you, or whatever it is that they're doing that could potentially wreck your game, so they'll do it. And normally with those, it's like on kind of like a timing thing. So, like they'll fire a thing and then like, wait. And so you'll wait and then see it and you can start to get the timing, there were definitely times where enemy placement was a little odd, which is weird because Mega Man is pretty much celebrated for its like good level design and enemy placement. There were a couple of times where I like where certain enemies were put in places where I was like, I kind of felt like I didn't really have time to react fast enough to that. But then again, you can take a lot of hits, so I just normally kind of like, nah, whatever.
Yeah, the only time I feel like enemy placement being terrible is unacceptable in a Mega Man game, which would be true for any similar platformer, is like in Plant Man stage, like there's these things that come friggin' flying from the back of the screen, which is unusual, right? So an enemy is approaching you from the back of the screen at super high speed, one of the only enemies that moves at this speed in the entire game, and you are doing complicated platforming over an instant death pit. So if you screw up the timing of that enemy shooting across the screen, for which there is no like indication that this is about to happen, you just have to know that it's about to happen, or just coincidentally not be in the middle of your jump arc, like you're gonna get hit and you're going to die, right? So yes. There's only a couple of moments like that in the entire game. If an enemy jumps out of the grass, also in Plant Man stage, right, like the stupid like grasshoppers, like they jump out of the grass, they're hard to see, but then once you know they're there, you're like, oh, okay. And if you never memorize that, you just take damage, you don't die. But when a non-telegraphed error against you that you had to memorize, otherwise you die, like that feels a little punitive.
Well, and I think that I don't know if we've discussed this before, but I think that the best way to determine the level of frustration felt for stuff like that is not in like how much damage did you take or how many lives did you use, but it's in units time, So how much time did you lose? So like if the grasshopper jumps out of the thing and hits you and you take some damage, you've realistically lost no time, not at that point anyways, because you got a lot of hits. You can take a lot of damage. You'll probably get that life back at some point. The amount of time that you've lost is near negligible, whereas in Plant Man stage in particular, because the area that you're talking about is a solid minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes off of the checkpoint, right? Which, keep in mind, if you lose all of your lives, you are now being put back to the beginning of the stage, which is probably 4 to 5 minutes off of this area that you're trying to get to. That's a substantial loss for a singular error, right? So this one error now cost you a minute and a half, as opposed to what you're used to at this point in Mega Man, a singular error costing you negligible time, So yeah, those are definitely rage quit moments. And I think that, like I said, I think that generally the telegraphing is really good. Plant Man stage in particular is a vicious nightmare, but we will get into that in mechanics because I have strong feelings about Plant Man stage.
So this will be my last visual note then, and then we can move on to audio. But the one place where I felt like the telegraphing is like shockingly bad, or at least I was not, I will accept, like maybe I just couldn't parse this out, right? So I want to blame the game, but I will accept, like maybe you're about to blow my mind. Flame Man, Turban Man, he's like, he has a turban and it's like weird. There's a lot of weird, subtle ethnic.
Torchman?
Torchman? Oh, crap. Anyway.
Fire Guy.
Yeah, Fire Guy. He oh man, Flame Man is from like Mega Man 1, isn't he?
I just Torrid Man.
Yeah. He one of his attacks is he like hits the ground basically, and like four little pillars come up, and there's four. The first two are a certain distance. 3 and 4 are also that same distance, but 2 and 3 are slightly further apart, so that if you are standing on the ground, you're less likely to get hit. And if you jump, you actually can jump over the Tower of Flame. The problem is they persist just long enough that if you jumped a little too anxiously, you're going to then fall crotch first onto the Tower of Flame as opposed to jumping over it victoriously. So the amount of times I successfully, through my own wit and guile, dodged his flames, I think is 0. The amount of times I dodged his flames through just happenstance was like a handful. And then the rest of the time I just got hit. Like I struggled with that, like avoiding that. Like all of the other enemies, like you can learn their tells and their pattern, and then you can like dodge. I could not I was like, I don't know what the tell is. I don't know what the trick is. I just have to kill him before he kills me, because every time he does this, I am going to take damage.
Yeah. Honestly, I didn't figure out the tell for that. I figured out my main formula for beating the Robot Masters was having at least one E-tank.
Yes. Yep.
And just slugging it out with them, man. I mean, like, there was no nuance, no poise, no beautiful counterpoint in our symphony. It was just a brutal slugfest of who could to damage more, like, harder. And because, again, I am a relic of a bygone age, like, he's just laying into me, like, gears are falling out, just motor oil pouring from my eyes and mouth. But then, like, he just sees, like, a single, like, Popeye style can roll out from my buster shot, and I just like eat it, and bam, laid him the hell out, So that's how I got around that.
Yeah, no, I mean, and then once you have like the right tool for the job, it's a little less egregious. But yeah, I mean, E-tanks all the way.
Yeah, but anyway, so yes, sound. This music had sound. As far as the music goes, again, this is one where I firmly fall into your camp of this is amazing, like kind of chip tunes to just kind of listen to in the background. Because one of the songs I've been listening to way more than I should, it's not from this one, but it's from Mega Man, is Mega Man 2 Wily's stage.
Oh, heck yes.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yes. I've just literally, I have about a 40-minute commute into work. That song is 2 minutes and 30 seconds long, and I have listened to it all the way into work before.
Yeah. So, no, dude, I have this crazy like dubstep, it's called chipstep, but like a chipstep remix of that song. It's amazing. I mean, like, I know that's not your favorite kind of music, but like, I can just headphones on, head down. Like, I can work for hours without like thinking about the entire world around me.
A, send that to me, and B, put it in the show notes. That way everybody can enjoy it.
Yes, sir.
But this music is very similar in the sense it's all kind of like very, very fun, very fast paced, and stuff that's kind of like good to get you in the mood. It's good background music, but it's not like generally hummable, unless you were to, pick out one. Like if you were to take any of the songs, pick it out, listen to it on repeat, chances are you would enjoy it and then be able to recite it. But aside from that, it's just great background music, which I really appreciate.
The tune is hummable in the sense that, like, it's not ambient music, because, like, hum the opening to The Dark Knight, right? Like, I bet you would recognize it if you heard it, but it's not a song that you would whistle on your way to the mailbox. Whereas, like, these songs they're good background music because they don't, like, get in your face. But once you learn them by playing the game over and over and over, or driving to work every day, like, you eventually do internalize the song, and the melody is such that you could recognizably like whistle it, which I think is another thing that Nintendo does really well, and that Capcom did really well in the Mega Man games, is even though this Mega Man game is not my favorite of the Mega Man classics, like, it still has really solid music. I think they actually used the same composer for all of the Mega Man classics. I can't remember her name, but it's a woman. She was like a super famous Capcom, early Nintendo composer, and she just basically wrote all his music herself, if I recall the story correctly. Like one super genius who just gave us all these amazing like Mega Man level songs. And they did another smart thing here where not only is Mega Man a relic of a bygone age, but his like level start music, the dun dun dun
Yep.
dun 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 dun, like that's amazing. And there was absolutely no reason for them to change that from game 1 to game 6, and they didn't.
Nope, they didn't change it in Mega Man X. They haven't changed it in Mega Man 11. It's just
that is maybe the ultimate if it ain't broke. Like just leave it alone. It's perfectly fine the way it is.
I mean, it's just like Legend of Zelda with like the Hyrule theme. I mean, like
yes, totally,
like exactly the same. In fact, the one of the only times they strayed from that was in Legend of Zelda 2: Link's Awakening, and I'm super happy that one of my favorite songs never touched that filthy game.
Yeah, right. It's like, oh man, this game. Stay away from my song.
Yeah, don't, you, if I ever find you near my song again, like
don't ever talk to me or my song again.
But so the music's great. I felt that the sound effects were very satisfying. The sound effect I really thought was good was the when you've hit an enemy noise, because that is there's basically, I may be wrong in this, but I think there's 2 noises when you hit a bad guy. There's the you've dealt damage noise and the you have not dealt damage noise.
I think you are correct, because the Robot Master weapons, many of them make their own little noise, but when they connect, I'm pretty confident they all still just make the damage noise.
Right. So that's the thing, is that, it's very clean. I mean, because visually, basically, it normally makes like a splat kind of thing, and then
it's like a little sparking like brick.
Yeah. And they'll typically flash. So that's a good visual, but then like there's also that immediate audio cue of like whether or not you've dealt damage, and it's this good kind of like almost like meaty, satisfying, like slamming kind of noise. And if you haven't, it makes that pink, and then
which is super unsatisfying and really different from the damage noise.
Yes, it is. It is the single tone equivalent of the sad trombone.
It totally is. Like, I'm going to shoot this enemy. Wah, wah.
God, I this may be not something that the internet has already gotten for us, but now I kind of want to just see somebody play through Mega Man, but have every time that noise happen be substituted with the sad trombone.
So I don't know if that exists, but what I can tell you there is a plethora of, for some unknown reason, is for a while people were doing ROM hacks where every single noise in a classic video game would be the Tim Allen grunt from Home Improvement.
That is bizarrely specific.
Yes. And dude, I gotta, like, there aren't a lot of things on the internet that I'm specifically nostalgic for, but when like YouTube and like E-Bombs World and Newgrounds were new, like people made weird art because the barrier to entry was so low. Mm-hmm. And in a world of like, you can literally be a multi-millionaire by being a jackass on YouTube. Like, no one is just making weird art and having it elevated into the weird art still exists, but it doesn't get elevated in the public consciousness the same way. So when something like all of Super Mario World, except all the sound effects, are replaced with the Tim Allen grunt from Home Improvement, like makes it into kind of the public sphere where people are generally aware of it, that kind of makes me excited. I'm like, oh man, I'm dialing up on my like 56K modem to see some weird internet stuff.
Speaking of weird internet stuff, this is definitely a tangent, but something I learned recently. So we all know and love Leroy Jenkins, right? Like that's
yes, we do. Yeah, and if we don't, we're not friends anymore.
Yeah. So that's fantastic. I for whatever reason I got nostalgic about that, so I looked up that video, and right below that video was the Wikipedia article about Leroy Jenkins, right?
Okay.
And so I clicked on that, and I learned 2 very interesting facts about that video, right? Which is, one, the guy that I forget the name, because I think Leroy Jenkins is like his like handle or something like that. I don't think that's his actual name. But anyways, he was not listening to that entire lengthy conversation. He was actually making chicken or something. Like he was making food, sat back down, put his headset on, and then immediately ran in. Like, so he wasn't a part of any of the conversation. Like, he just so it wasn't like he was slowly becoming impatient. He sat down impatient.
Oh, good.
You know,
I didn't get bad. I am bad.
But the really interesting part was, and I don't know anything about World of Warcraft, but this was not flagged on Wikipedia for like being biased or being, not factual, like none of those flags, right? So this stands as far as Wikipedia is concerned, which it said like Leroy Jenkins quickly dismantles their, well thought through plan, like their well discussed plan. And it says, note, the plan that they had come up with shows a deep fundamental misunderstanding of the then current World of Warcraft rules.
Oh my God.
And I was like, whoa, Wikipedia, like, come on.
Did you look at like the talk page? Like, was that edit from Leroy Jenkins?
I did not check that, but like I saw that and I was like, so even without Leroy messing everything up, this was doomed to fail. But like, I don't know. I just got a particular kick out of that, especially that verbiage.
No, and I like to think of him as like the merciful. He's the person, like in the B horror movie, he's the dad with the shotgun who has to do the horrible task of like shooting his wife and children and then killing himself because he's only got like 4 bullets and there's hundreds of zombies coming, right? So like, they all thought that he was just the worst, and he's just like, this plan can never succeed. I have to save them from themselves. Leroy Jig.
But that links perfectly back to Mega Man sound effects, which totally
does.
Yeah. I will say that one of the sound effects that I found to be lackluster, and I think that this is definitely just my nostalgia goggles, is generally X's, like, the sound effects that his special weapons make are kind of meh. Because like the Buster, like it's charging like that sounds so cool. And especially because I'm remembering Mega Man X where you could also charge the special weapons. It felt so cool and so awesome. But like when you got like Blizzard Man's thing, it goes like plink, plink. I was like, why do you even bother to come to shit like this, Blizzard Man? You know?
And I think it's worth pointing out that his weapon also looks spectacularly boring and terrible. Right?
Does.
I mean, so it sounds unspectacular and it looks like critically unspectacular. So there's a lot of they're almost incentivizing it. Yeah, they're almost incentivizing you to rely on the Buster, like the Mega Buster, or saying like, oh hey, this is like Mega Man is like the cool guy, and the weapons he gets from the Robot Master is like, that's just a thing he has to do. But like really blue Mega Man with the Mega Buster, like that's the guy you want to be.
And to be fair, X does remind me like a little bit of Invader Zim with the Dark Harvest, like he's like more robot parts means more robot, like he's just slowly harvesting because I know the sprite doesn't change, but in my mind, he's just like 50 pounds heavier because he has all of these different like cells in him. And he's like, no, I have all the powers now. I am the most robot.
No, I mean, it is a weird, I think, artifact of being a successful franchise that they could have done more robust sounds for all the weapons, but I would say in their defense, there's a good chance that they were trying not to be repetitive and say like, well, okay, we had an ice weapon in these 3 other Mega Man games. We don't want to make it sound just like that. Okay, how about this sound? Well, now it sounds kind of like this other weapon from this other game. Like, I would genuinely believe, especially when you consider some of the visuals, that they were definitely trying to not repeat themselves. And I think because the audio palette is limited way more dramatically than the visual palette is, like you run out of noises. Like you run out of noises you can make, especially if you're like, the ice noise needs to be like high pitched and ice crystally, and you can only make so many of those with a Nintendo. So once you've made 3 of them, you now either have to repeat yourself or go to plink.
But yeah, those were most of my notes about sound. Do you have anything else in particular?
So I do have a couple like things. I don't think these are super deep thoughts, but I did just want to mention them. The Mega Buster charging sound effect is just deeply satisfying. Like it just feels good. And like even just walking around, like holding it down all the time where it's just constantly like wah, 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 like never gets annoying. You just always feel empowered. The teleport noise at the end of the stage, because for some reason it doesn't do it on the way in, but it does do it on the way out. They're like whoop, 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 whoop. Like again, very satisfying. Maybe that's why they only do it on the way out, because then you associate that sound with victory, right?
I would agree with that.
I don't like that the Robot Master exploding noise is the same as the me exploding noise. And the visual is identical. Like it's just nothing else blows up like a Robot Master or a Mega Man, right? The balls like slowly going off. Because there were a couple times where I had 1 bar of Mega Man remaining, right? All of my motor oil had leaked out of my eyes. And then you hear that explosion noise, and for just a second you're like, oh wait, it was him. Right? Like that is a terrifying moment.
Well, and I actually, and I agree with you that it is generally bad form to do that. You don't want to conflate a good sound with a bad sound. That being said, I kind of liked those moments just personally because it was very reminiscent of like, the 2 samurai like clash, and they both land, right? And then like you see like the blood, and then like just one of them falls over because I was like, oh God. Oh no, wait, it wasn't me. Like like I personally got a kick out of that, but I will say that is just me like making lemonade out of that, because like you are correct. It is bad form to do that. It's just that it happened to have a good experience for me.
Yeah. Well, and I'll agree with you in such that there are 2 important things. One, hearing that noise can't have given you retroactively any information that would have saved your life. Right? So if you hear the explosion noise and you think it was you, but it turns out it was them, or you think it was them, but it turns out it was you, that doesn't change anything. Either they're dead or you are, and that cannot be changed now. If you hear that noise, or you see the visual, and like it's the same kind of thing. Like if they're dead, you're not going to open the menu and use an E-tank. Like you won, it's over, right? So the fact that it doesn't change anything about the gameplay, I think actually supports being relieved, like being tense and then relieved if you were near death and they explode and you don't. Because if you have full life and they explode, like it's not you. But yeah, no, I can kind of see that. It also puts the Robot Masters in a clever audio way on a level that only Mega Man is, because no other boss, even Wily's big machines at the end, they don't explode like that. Only the Robot Masters and Mega Man die in that particular way, which puts them all on an interesting level above the normal lame-o robots that you encounter all throughout the levels. So I'll give this a pass, but I will say that it aged me horribly a couple of times.
And actually, this kind of segues well into this is kind of like an overarching like thematic thing, but I do like the idea that you are like the Robot Masters. Like the reason why you're able to like plow through this whole stage is because you're better than like the whatever like Blinky robots. You're better than the Panda robots. You're better than that. Like you're Mega Man. You're not better than the Robot Masters. Like they are on par with you. So they behave the same way and all this sort of stuff, and so you slowly get their materia and you become stronger, right? But like you I don't even know if I used that right.
I mean I enjoyed it.
Okay, so anyways, but like I do like the idea is like when you die, this is what you like. When they die, it's the same thing. So it's just kind of like it's almost like brother killing brother kind of a thing,
Yeah, and I think that's actually established in the canon, right? Because all of the original robots were made by Dr. Light, and then Dr. Wily turns them evil. So they're literally in a very like Dr. Light is our creator father way, like your siblings. So yeah, I mean thematically and yes, also literally.
So mechanics, controls?
I believe we shall.
Okay, so for this one, I actually do have a note for controls, which is the question that I pose to everyone is there ever a reason for you to not be actively charging your buster?
I mean, some enemies move quickly enough that you might want to hit them with the buster and then like fire a bunch more random shots.
Sure.
But fire a bunch more lemons. But I'm guessing you are thinking you should be able to charge and let go, stay charged, and then press again to release.
No, I'm saying that you should press no buttons and charge.
How would you fire regular lemons?
Just by hitting B before you're fully charged.
Oh, so if you are just spamming your murder button.
If you just spam B, it's just going to fire lemons. But if you're not pressing anything, then you should just be charging.
I have not thought this through well enough to, it feels wrong because it's so counter to how the game operates, but I can't actually say for sure that would break anything mechanically.
Well, here's why. Is two things. One is, that basically can almost free up a button, because if you're doing it that way, you could potentially kind of multi-use that button. But much more importantly is from an accessibility standpoint. There's really like telling somebody you have to consistently hold down a button, right? If I have any kind of motor coordination like problems with that hand, then that makes playing Mega Man potentially impossible.
I hear what you're saying. I would submit that this game, even now in the modern day, is not designed to be accessible to someone who can't do Twitch action platforming. Like it is knowingly and willingly barring a certain kind of person.
Definitely, potentially. But that being said, though, is that I think that there's a difference between like being able to like quickly press the button versus being able to consistently hold down pressure, Well,
and kind of use the middle of your joint to do complicated platforming while you're holding it down.
Right, which is why I'm just saying that, like, I do believe that the same could be, like literally, if it's just kind of like, if I'm just, walking around, not firing anything, I should just be charging. And then if I do need to rapidly fire, just, like, by virtue of, because then, like, worst case scenario, my first shot is going to be a fully charged shot, and then I'll follow it up with lemons, So that was just something that, I kind of, and you're right, it is just so core to Mega Man, that you're like, yeah, of course, you got to actively charge your buster shot. Why? Duh, it's Mega Man. But like, I'm like, well, yeah, but do you have to?
Yeah, it would. I agree with you that it would make the game a little bit more accessible in terms of like games literacy. I don't know if you had like a true motor issue. I don't know if that would be enough, but I think if you maybe just had a lower games literacy where you just hadn't built those twitch reflexes, then the platforming sections would certainly be more approachable. And that's what I don't think it'd be like game breakingly more approachable where it's like, oh, now that I don't have to charge the buster shot, this game is child's play, right? Like, I don't think it would be that extreme, but it would. I don't hate this idea.
And like I said, like, it's just something that I think is, and as far as like, I am fortunate to be very healthy. So like, I don't know it's like the whole like litany of like different disabilities, but any like I don't think that it would like, it certainly wouldn't hurt, So, to say like, hey, listen, because I know that one of the things that they do in first person shooters and this is an accessibility option, is, and so I think that it kind of falls into the same thing. And again, I don't know what their crafting is for, is not having to hold down a button to look down the sights, being able to tap the button. When you look down the sights, tap it again, you stop looking down the sights. Yeah. And so like, I know that since like this to me like kind of fell into the same line of like not having to hold a button, being able to just, like to get the same result.
Yeah. And I think in a way, someone who has a motor function issue is going to have a similar experience to someone who just has a lower games literacy. So if you could make a change to the control scheme that makes the game more accessible to someone with a lower games literacy, then you might get some of the people in the like legitimate motor function issue group to at least get the game from unplayable to playable, right? Because there's I think a chasm that's worth respecting. Saying we made this thing equally difficult for everyone of all abilities is like that's not a thing that can happen, right? Like someone who is deaf and blind and has no hands and feet, like there's no way you could take a game like Mega Man unless you have like a neural interface and make it accessible to that person, right? There are boundaries to how much you can make an accommodation. But like nowadays we have interesting controllers where it's like, oh, you only have one hand, hold half the controller in your hand and the other like half of the controller you use with your feet. And it's like super fascinating, those kinds of things. The Nintendo didn't do any of that. So saying we're just not going to force anyone to hold this button down was definitely not a consideration they had at the time, because I wouldn't be surprised if it was the opposite. They said to themselves, oh, you know what would make this platforming section harder? If you had to hold the button down the entire time you're trying to push another button with the same finger. Like that's almost probably intentional. And now in hindsight, it's like, was that strictly necessary?
Well, I mean, it's just kind of like with the insane flashing screens. We're like, this looks awesome. It's like it's giving people seizures. Like it's in that same line. And to me, I think it was just kind of like, and it makes sense logically, like in the same way that kind of like when we did Battle Chess, where we were saying like, yeah, you know, you take the game, it's already a game, so you just make it so that way the pieces battle, and you're like, well, you know, you should probably do a little bit more than that because there's an extra layer of depth. Same thing where it's just like, are you doing something in the game? Then you should be doing something in real life, you know? Like, I mean, even if you just go back to like racing games, like, is there any reason to not be holding down the accelerator? No, you would always want to do that. You may want to have a button to brake, you know, or to decelerate, right? Because that is something that you need to do. But as a general rule, there's no reason to not be punching the gas. So, but why have a button dedicated to like, you know, like where you just have to hold it down? You should always be. But again, that's just the way it was. It's like, you are you doing something in the game? You should be doing something in real life. And I think it's only until recently that we've been experimenting with the thing of like, yeah, that's the way real life works, but these are games. We don't have to be constrained by those laws or whatever. So,
well, and there's the racing comparison is really interesting, or driving, I should say, is a really interesting comparison, because when you're driving a real car, you would be doing the accelerator part with your foot, right? So you literally have an entire extra limb dedicated to this single task, which frees up your other limbs to do other tasks. So when you scale that down to a controller, and it's like, okay, I mean, think like a Super Nintendo controller layout. It's like, okay, well, we want you to do everything that a vehicle does with your left thumb, and then all of the other things a vehicle does with your right thumb. And sometimes you might need to do multiple things that are on the same side of the controller at the same time. So you're going to have to use the joint in the middle of your thumb and the pad of your thumb to try and smash multiple buttons, sometimes at the same time, sometimes in a sequence, right? And I mean, this is like every fighting game is they're trying to take the complexity of the human body and put it all in your thumb. And I get that is a limitation of video games until we have the Matrix, but I do think there is an interesting question to ask. Do we have to make this parallel real life? Or you could ask, do we want to make it so that Mega Man is always like that, a fully charged Buster shot is something you always have in your tool belt? Like if you're not willing to learn how to do the crazy jump and hold, then maybe you don't deserve to have the fully charged Buster shot. Like that might have been an intentional I doubt it, but that might have been an intentional decision.
And I think that it's just I think that this is something that we see more in current games than we did before, which is just like originally. I think that different things are taken for granted, right? Because we now have so much time with video games that there are some things that's like, this is the way that you do this thing that you're trying to do. So since we don't have to leverage all of our energy, like rebuilding the wheel, even like with like Unreal engines and things like that, you know, like, so we don't have to spend all our time doing that. We can start asking those types of questions. Whereas before it was just kind of like, I honestly don't think there was any thought put into it. and I don't blame anybody for that. It's just
Oh
like,
yeah, it's not malicious. It's because these other tasks had all of their attention.
yeah, exactly. So it was just kind of like, okay, well, so we want him to be able to charge a Buster Shot. Great. So you hold B to charge a Buster Shot. Got it. And then just moved on. I didn't think like, well, under what conditions would you not want that? So therefore, should it maybe work this other way? Like that just didn't even worry about it. But like I said, I thought it could be an interesting choice. Yeah. I really want to make sure that we touch on cycle time. So you want to start with that? Or?
The only other thing I wanted to make sure I said about controls is just the biggest difference to me between Mega Man Classic and Mega Man X is sliding versus dashing. The amount of mobility you have in the world where you can dash is many orders of magnitude more than in Mega Man Classic, where you can only slide. Because first off, you always have to do the full slide. You can't jump out of the slide or abort it in any way. And second, you can't like slide, jump, like, and use your slide to like give you momentum the way you can with the dash. So it's not a bad thing, but because I've played Mega Man X so much more overall than I've played Mega Man Classic, even though I've played Mega Man Classic a lot, like you just feel slower, like you feel like you can't move through the world as nimbly. And the level design absolutely respects that. The level design absolutely respects how big your jump arc is, how fast you move, the way the enemies are placed. Like it's not broken in any way. It's just once you get them dash boots in Penguin Man or Ice Penguin stage in Mega Man X, you are forever changed. And
yes,
it's really hard to go back. It's really hard to go back.
And the same thing, I think the exact same thing, and we don't have to get into it, but the exact same thing, but with the wall grabbing,
Oh yeah.
Like,
oh yeah.
Like when you're like, all right, I just gotta, oh right, no, I can't do that. Huh. And, like, so you get so used to that, to having that tool in your tool belt, that when all of a sudden it's taken away, you're just kind of like, what it's like, hey man, we just we're just gonna have you, like we're just gonna type how many words per minute you can type. Okay, cool. Gonna definitely take your pinky and ring finger though. What? It's okay, dude. We're only gonna need you to type at 30 words per minute. Well, I could probably do that with those two fingers missing, but it's gonna feel weird, right? Like, but yeah, no. So the cycle time. I did not care for the cycle time, and here's why. I think that, and again, I don't think that this is, it certainly was not uncommon in the day. I think that the fact that there's basically a mid checkpoint, that in and of itself was above average. I don't want to say it was revolutionary, because a lot of games did stuff like that, like Castlevania did that, Mario did that, but like there were definitely, that was not standard, like that was something that like you were happy when that happened, because there were definitely games like Battletoads that did not do stuff like that, right? That being said, just having just this singular mid checkpoint, right, causes issues with how you can modulate your difficulty, because typically you want the difficulty to build as a level goes on, so that way like climaxes like right at the end, right? But the problem then is that you're dialing out your cycle time. And as we've mentioned, is that the amount of anger that a player feels is directly proportional to time lost. So if all of a sudden you crank up your difficulty, like right before you get to the boss, like in Plant Man stage, and then you're constantly reliving this purgative hell, this Sisyphusian effort of, like trying to get past that one area, it's pretty awful. Definitely in Plant Man stage was the only time where I couldn't get past it. Like I just could not arrest the momentum of that train. But definitely I think that, shorter cycle times are your friend. And I don't think that this game fully mastered that.
So I think there are a couple of times where the cycle time feels almost punishing. It doesn't quite get there for me anywhere except Plant Man stage, where the cycle time absolutely feels punishing. But the cycle time there is consistent with cycle time everywhere else. The problem with Plant Man stage is the level design, right? The level design doesn't respect the cycle time that they've decided on for the rest of the game. The rest of the game does, and is designed around it. And the thing that because we talked about this a little bit like pre-show, the two things they did that I actually murdered myself a whole bunch just to confirm that this was true, because I don't know if this is true of every Mega Man game, but it is true in Mega Man 6. When you die, you go back to the midpoint if you reach the midpoint. When you die all the dies, you go back to the stage select screen, or you can just say continue and you'll just start that level over immediately. And that can happen ad infinitum. Mm-hmm. So the game will actually allow you to continue to bash your head against that wall until you learn the lessons required to get past that stage. Now, I still think Plant Man stage is too punishingly difficult in the second act to allow for that long of a cycle time. But every other level, it actually feels appropriate. Like, okay, you have 2 Mega Man heads in your head inventory. You died. Okay, we're going to let you try again. You died again. All right, one more time, because 0 counts in Mega Man games. And then you die again, and they're like, okay, now you need to go back to the beginning of the level, because clearly you did not master these puzzle elements or these platforming elements early enough that you are ready for them in this more complicated situation. In Plant Man stage, it's like, hey, remember that thing we showed you once? Here's that 15 times over an instant death pit. Oh, also this other element and springs. Like, it's just, oh God, it's awful. It's so abusively aggressive. It's terrible.
Yes, and also that all of that complete garbage storm hits you a minute and a half away from the checkpoint, you know?
Yes. Yeah, because it's right before the boss door.
Right. So, it's just kind of like, okay, so now I get to like waste another minute and a half of my life getting past through this. Don't make a mistake though, because you lose a Mega Man head and you're potentially going to be down 4 minutes. And then this also couples with another choice that they made that I disagree with, which is that health items, you can make the argument for 1-ups, but health items in particular don't respawn, So
oh no, so like if you walk off, yeah, it's gone.
Yeah, well, yeah. What I'm saying is that like if I get like there's like a little like health pellet, right, and I eat it, and then I die. If I go back across that area, it is not there anymore.
Correct. Yes.
So what that's saying is that the first time through, right, like I needed this health, right? And now the second time through, right, where I am arguably maybe a little bit better, but probably not quantized that much better, I now no longer have access to that. So it literally, it does create like an interesting thing where like sometimes you may want to skip a health pellet in case, like you want to like come back and get it later. But at the same point in time, like if I'm struggling with an area, ramping up the difficulty it just seems like an odd choice to me.
Well, it's very much a throwing into the deep end. Like they put you in the shallow end and it doesn't work, and they're like, okay, well, into the deep end you go anyway.
Yeah, and so I felt like that plus the high cycle time, because I mean, again, you don't want to make everything life based. You do want to have some things that can just suddenly kill you, because that will definitely ratchet up the intensity of it.
Yeah,
but again, putting that so far out from like a midpoint save, and again, I do want to stress the fact that Plant Man stage was the only stage where it was egregious, because generally the rhythm that I got into was life 1 I would get to the checkpoint. Sometimes I get all the way to the boss, but generally life 1 I get to the checkpoint and get an E-tank somewhere along the way. Life 2 I'd get to the boss and fight him once and start to learn his pattern. Then life 3, fight the boss for real at full health, and then use my E-tank and then kill him. And I was happy with that pace, and that was kind of the pace. And then Plant Man just shot that all to hell, So like I said, it was just so bizarre, because it's not like, in my mind, it's not like they just slipped and fell and, like made an error here. I mean, like you just look at the layout of the level and it's like this insane, almost like Salvador Dali-esque like mishmash of garbage, and I'm just kind of like, because what really where I just kind of like saw it and just stared into the abyss too long, and the abyss had stared back into me, was when you're jumping across these things, and like while you're mid jump from one platform to another, it's the gun turret that is also bouncing on the things shooting at you. And I was like, oh, Oh, come on.
Yeah, no, it's madness making. Like it's, you know what it is? It's Stan coming back with the leopard holding the flamethrower. You just get to that and you're just like, really? Like this made it through Q&A? Like, come on. Or QA, not Q&A, or maybe both.
Quality and assurance. This is quality, I assure you.
So, there's a thing I need to ask you about. We have our shtick with research, and I love it, and I think it's authentic for reasons we've touched on in other episodes. Go find them, reference them now. Sure. It'll be ironic. But I was talking to somebody about this game, and did you look up the boss order, like which weapon works well on which boss?
No. No. And to be fair, I kind of should have, just because it's super important, but but I didn't. I just played it through because,
So again. I did, and I didn't even think twice about doing that. And here's why. So I'm talking to someone about the game, and I'm like, oh yeah, we're replaying Mega Man 6 for the next episode. And they were like, well, how do you know? Because this is someone who had like no experience with Mega Man Classic at all. I was like, how do you know what order to beat the bosses in? And I was like, well, I've played it before. And they're like, well, yeah, but what if you hadn't? And I was like, well, I mean, I looked it up. And they were like, but this game came out in like the early 90s. How would you have looked it up? And I was like, in Nintendo Power. And they're like, what if you didn't have Nintendo Power? I would have asked a friend. And they're like, what if you have no friend? Trial and error. Like, and when I got to, there's like a 5 whys kind of thing. It's like, when I got to trial and error, I was like, oh, that's an unsatisfying answer. Like, really? Like, you'd play through the whole game in every permutation? That's gross. I don't think that's right. And so after I had that conversation, I was playing through, and I did not heavily stress test this, but there are actually subtle indicators in the levels that would kind of encourage you. So like in Blizzard Man stage, there's these little pillars that look distinctly different from all of the other ice. And there are items that you yourself might want on the other side of those ice. And so what would a person think? Like, oh, if I had a flame weapon of some kind, I could probably melt that ice. And that exists in no other part of the game. So you kind of think like, well, if I had gone through Flame Man stage first, and then I came to Blizzard Man stage, I would have the weapon that will work well here, right? And I wish I'd taken better notes because this kind of occurred to me when I did not have the ability to write things down. But there's a handful of places throughout the game where it's like, oh, here's this subtle reminder that if you had done this other thing a minute ago, you might be better equipped to handle this. And you could start to kind of intuit the order. It is not spelled out for you. It is not obvious in any way, but you could, with no friends, no subscription to Nintendo Power, and no internet, you could intuit enough of the order that I think you could fill in the last few blanks, right? Through trial and error, or just through like random guessing. And that actually restored my faith in the designers a little bit, because when I got to like, oh, well, you would just figure it out by trial and error, like that frustrated me. I was like, no, like who's going to play through this game in that many permutations where they're just like, oh, I eventually figured it out. Like, that's not fun.
It's not fun. That's not what we do for fun. Yeah. And I do enjoy stuff like that. And I do agree that they do kind of telegraph it, but with stuff like that, where it's like, oh, well, which weapon is good against which bosses? I do agree that definitely, like when you played it back in the day, or, I mean, because obviously if you're playing it now, you look it up on the internet, like it's not cheating by today's standards, so if the question is like, would be like, does it hold up now? Well, yeah, because you got the internet, like check the game out and look it up and then go do it. The question is like, well, what if you didn't have the internet? It's like, well, then I would be at a point in time when there was no internet, in which case, literally, what did you do? You had Nintendo Power, or you knew somebody that did, and you guys talked about this like all the time, and even then, like a lot of the times, like for both of our nostalgia experiences, you were playing with another person. So somebody would recognize that and be like, hey, can you melt that? Like how do we get to that? I mean, like even with the big, Mega Man fists, right? The Punch Man, I'm going to call him Punch Man. So Punch Man, like, you see these like big cracked blocks or whatever, and you're like, huh, it's weird. And all of a sudden it's like, now you have Power Mega Man. Huh, punch those blocks, see what happens. And you punch one, you're like, oh, and then you go through it. So I definitely feel that there's some good visual cues with the game design as far as like what to use on what. But
yeah, no, they definitely don't leave you completely in the dark. It would be interesting to scrutinize it and be like, can I completely, without fighting a single robot master, could I discern the order I should be defeating them in from the game itself? And I feel like the answer is yes, with an almost unreasonable amount of work, but it wouldn't be impossible. And that's not nothing, right? Because we didn't all have Nintendo Power or a friend with Nintendo Power, but they were kind of expecting you to, just like, we've talked about before, like it's an arcade, it's a social environment. Like I feel like they're kind of expecting you to sit with your brother, sister, cousin, neighbor, whatever, mom, dad, and like,
or all of them at the same time.
All of these people reading Nintendo Power
in one person. I'm saying like they would all be one person. Like you'd be still sitting with one person, but all of those relationships.
We are the world. Gross, dude. And
right.
And yeah, so like there is a little bit of that. Like, yeah, we expect you to talk to other people as game design, right? So I don't want to just say like they get a pass, but I mean a little. Like I'm giving them a break a little bit. Yeah, I'm cool with it. I'm okay.
So with all that said, did it hold up?
For me, yeah, it absolutely did, and I'm relieved to say that because, like I said in the top of the show, like Mega Man 3 and Mega Man 4 were like my Mega Mans, and then I skipped. I honestly don't think 5 existed, and then I skipped 6, and I never played the classics that were on Super Nintendo because I knew they were hot garbage. And so Mega Man, when I think of Mega Man games, I think actually of Mega Man X, and only then when I'm like, oh no, Mega Man Classic, that's like 2, 3, and 4, right? So like I had some fear going into this, especially because we'd already played Mega Man X, that I was going to be like, oh no, this is going to be bad, it's going to be hard, it's not going to be as fun as Mega Man X was. But like I super enjoyed this. I felt like other than the frame rate issues that occasionally cropped up, and other than the second half of Platinum stage, like everything else feels super polished, super fun, like absolutely held up. Like I would put this into a normal rotation.
I definitely also felt it held up. For me, it was on the hairy edge of a nostalgia monocle, just because, and this isn't fair, but it's like, whenever, it's like, who would you recommend this game to? It's like, I'd actually recommend this game to a lot of people. It's a good, fun game. But if I was going to recommend a Mega Man game, I'd recommend Mega Man X, know? So,
yeah. I mean, if you're going to watch a movie with a Baldwin, right? Like, yeah, there's a bunch of them, but
yeah, you're not going to go with Kevin, Like, or was it the who's the one Hemsworth brother that like is just a doctor?
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, like they're all the Hemsworths, and like they joke about like the one brother who's like just a doctor. It's like, don't worry, man. One day you may be a famous actor.
That sucks.
But no, I mean, like that being said, like the game is super super enjoyable. Like I said, the visuals are good, the sound effects are good, the mechanics are generally good. Don't play Plant Man stage. Aside from that, like it absolutely holds up. It's just, like again, it's through no fault of its own. It has a very very stellar younger brother that is just knocking it out of the park. But overall, man, I mean, I with my experience, it wasn't good. It wasn't super. My experience was pretty mega, man.
The curtain falls. The music plays, the credits roll, then it all fades to black, and you're left by yourself. The fanfare is gone, there's no player 2 there by your side to share victories won. But as you slowly progress down the hall to your bed, a few great events leak back into your head from the time that you spent traversing the land, battling evil, fighting the darkness, just sword in hand. Your memories creeping with the edge of a smile. You realize again what you lost for a while. You're gonna think back much less
So my first thought is I'm going to go pee. But I figure that'll be an easy place to cut it.
Yes.